Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. Mike Nelson, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I know we're trying this again because of some technical difficulties, and I appreciate you hanging in there with us. Like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story. And our passion is to help them tell it. So with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go all the way up to today. And we want to talk about anything that you're working on today and or for tomorrow, okay?
Sure. I'll do my best.
Appreciate you coming back, buddy. So tell us where you were born.
Well, I was born in Chicago, in the inner city, actually in the mean streets of the inner city of Chicago. We were one of the first families that were moved into the first projects that were ever built in Chicago. Until I was 4 years old, we lived in a one-room apartment with no windows and an air shaft, but no windows. My sister, my younger brother, and I, and then my folks. When we were 5, we moved in. We got up to the 7th floor of the projects, and that was a little bit above all of the noise. When I was 6 years old, my dad got caught in the stairwell on payday and got beaten within an inch of his life, and they took his paycheck. Back then, of course, paychecks, you didn't get a paycheck. You got paid at the pay window.
Yeah.
That was before checking accounts and things like that. And so he got robbed, and we got some hard times after that for a little while. And so my folks figured out a way and moved out of the inner city, out into the west side of Chicago. And I did the rest of my growing up on the west side of Chicago, where there were gangs. By the time I was 8, I was being recruited for shoplifting and opening skylights and different things like that. And first time I was picked up by the police, I was 8 years old. By the time I was 10, I already had a sheet.
Wow.
And so my folks, when I was that age, they sent me to live with my aunt, who had a small little truck farm up in southern Wisconsin, where she milked cows by hand and lived out of her garden. And so I was banished from the city to live on this little place with no electricity in the barn and a pump in the front yard for water. And
Wow.
And I thought I had died and gone to heaven.
Oh,
I really did.
So how old were you? 10?
I was 10 going on 11, yeah.
Yeah. So what was your favorite thing about growing up on the farm?
Oh, just the work and the outdoors and things that you could do with your hands. And not only that, it was, I didn't have to worry about which side of the street I was walking on, because when I was 10, I took a different way home for a change, and I walked down the wrong side of the street. And so the people that were on my side of the street didn't like the people that were on the other side of the street. And I got pretty badly trashed, broke my collarbone, broke my arm, broke my nose. I had stitches, was in the hospital for about a week. And that was the last straw for my folks. That's why they sent me away.
Yeah. How nice of your aunt to take you on, though, you know?
I'm sorry?
How sweet of your aunt to take you on.
Yeah, she had 11 kids of her own,
Oh my
and
goodness gracious.
so I made an even dozen.
Wow.
But
That's amazing, man.
so I actually have uh, 5 siblings of my own
Yeah.
and 11 step siblings
My
that I
goodness
grew up
gracious.
with too, and we're all still pretty tight.
So where'd you go to high school?
I went to high school in the western suburbs. I graduated in a from a class. I went to school during the year with my folks, and as soon as there was time off, Easter vacation, Christmas vacation,
Mhm.
summer vacation, any kind of 3-day weekends, my dad would put me on the train and I would whistle stop in Warren, Illinois.
Mhm.
And I'd get out there and make a call and sit on my suitcase until somebody came to get me.
Wow.
So I graduated in the western suburbs in a class of almost 2,000 students,
Wow. That's a
and
large high school.
sure was. Yeah, I can remember my counselor telling me that my class standing was like 320th, and I was still in the top half of the class.
Wow. Wow. That's crazy. So did you have a favorite subject in high school?
Yeah, I like science. I really did like science a lot, and um, I had I didn't like the classes that were mandatory. I had a little bit of an attention deficit disorder,
Yeah.
and so I didn't like economics or American history or well, the Constitution classes. So I took those during the summer,
Oh yeah.
and because the class was only like 6 weeks long,
Yeah, they were shorter, a lot shorter.
and I took those on my own during the summer. And so by the time that I was a second semester junior, I already had enough credits to graduate.
Wow.
But
Wow. That is so cool.
but I couldn't graduate because you had to have 4 years of English,
Oof.
which I didn't like very much. And I had my senior year, I failed English both semesters.
Oh my gosh.
And since you had to have it to graduate, I had already distinguished myself as a bit of a disciplinary issue problem for the school. And the last thing they wanted was for me to come back the next year.
Yeah.
And so um, at the end of the senior year, the dean and my English teacher met and told me that I was going to get a test. It was a pass fail test. It would be 3 hours long. And if I passed, I graduated. So I sat in the library and took this test after school was over on the last day of school.
Mhm.
And I passed it and they told me I could graduate. But I never explained to my parents why my name wasn't in the graduation program.
You were sort
And
of a last minute ad, right?
well, I was afraid to tell them I was going to flunk.
Yeah.
And so I didn't tell them. And they had made plans to come to the graduation. So they came, but my name wasn't in the program. And they thought, wow, that was a very strange sort of thing.
Mhm.
But I did walk the stage and they gave me a little folder, but no diploma because they hadn't had time to print it up.
Right. Yeah, they needed time to get the system in place. Wow. That's a cool story though. Okay. So let me ask you this. Growing up, who was the most influential person to you?
My sixth grade teacher, Mr. Dalton,
Okay. Why
he
Mr.
was
Dalton?
he was the first man teacher that I'd ever had.
Yeah.
And he was the first one that literally took me out to the woodshed a couple of times and straightened my shit right out. I'll tell
Yeah.
you what. He didn't brook any nonsense in his class. And so for at least 2 whole months in 6th grade, my desk was in the closet in the teacher's lounge.
Really?
And I wasn't allowed to sit in the classroom. I could stand in the back of the room if there was a class that I needed to get. Otherwise, I was banished to the closet.
Okay. So looking
And
back on that, hindsight being 2020, you appreciate that? You appreciate
he was the first guy that ever said what he meant and meant what he said. And
yeah,
if he told you it was weak, your was going to be weak. And it was
okay,
going to be weak till you straighten yourself out.
right.
And so I didn't really like him that much, but I sure did respect him.
But looking back, you're appreciative of what he did?
Absolutely.
I got you.
Absolutely. He was the first person to, I always had people that would always say, if I had to stop this car,
Yeah,
you're going to be sorry. But
yeah,
they never stopped the car.
right.
And there were people that always said they were going to do something, but didn't. And they all worried about it. I mean, my dad would come and pick me up at the police station after I'd been picked up for something. And all the way home, I'd get it verbally, but, he didn't know what to do with me.
Yeah,
And he knew that I was probably going to do it again tomorrow anyway. And
yeah.
so Paul Dalton was the first one that ever did what he said he was going to do and did it every time.
Isn't that amazing how as a kid, the one person who did what they said they were going to do, right, had a major impact on you, and all the rest of the people that talked a great game but didn't act didn't,
Mhm.
like they didn't have credibility, right? And
Exactly.
one
Yeah.
of the things that I told my kids growing up was I said, look, I'm not I'm not looking to be your best friend. Okay. I'm here to be
Mhm.
your dad. You're not going to like some of the things that I decide. You're not going to
Mhm.
like some of my decisions. But here's the
Right.
thing. I'm not here to be popular. I'm here to get you prepared to go out of that big, beautiful world and make a contribution. Make it better than how you found it. Okay. You're
Mhm.
not going to leave this house as an adult and be a burden on society. I'm not looking for somebody else to raise you. I'm raising you. Okay. And they
Right.
appreciated that. Both of them, since they're now 23 and 25, both of them independently have come to me and said, Dad, thank you so much for raising us the way you did.
Yeah. No kidding.
Kind of
Yeah.
cool. But we were all about doing what we said we were going to do, right?
Mhm.
We
Sure.
literally followed through. So it wasn't, look, you're going to be in a timeout and then you weren't. You were in a timeout.
Right.
No, it was that simple. So it's amazing how children appreciate and respect that you do what you say you're going to do,
Right.
right? I think one of the worst things parents can do, absolutely one of the worst things they can do is say, do as I say, not as I do.
Right. Exactly.
Let's be honest. Parenting is sacred leadership. Okay.
That's a good way to put it.
Leadership is something you do by example,
Mhm.
period.
Because they're watching all the time.
Absolutely. They're sponges. They want to be exactly like you. And I'll tell you a quick story. Michael was our oldest, was 2 or 3, something like that. And I called them my road warriors when they were babies, because at the time I was so busy, I didn't even know who I was. And my wife, bless her heart, was home with the kids. And so she would pile the kids up every day. And it got to where every morning Michael would go, Mom, where are we going today? Literally.
Mm.
Okay. She'd pile them up and she'd run around San Diego County collecting documents for me and delivering documents. I mean, she was unbelievably, she was so important. She was so invaluable to what I was doing at the time. She and the babies were, in tow, right? So I called them my little road warriors. Okay. Well, apparently, when my wife would drive the kids, she had a phrase that she used. And it sort of came back to haunt her in the grocery store one day. So they're standing in the grocery store, Michael's in the cart, and there's this lady who's, I guess, fairly large, in front of them. And Michael said, "Hey, lady, pick a lane, will you?" They are absolute sponges, right? And
Right,
they want to be
exact.
just like you, right?
Yes, they are.
You got to be
Mhm.
really careful how you act when you're around them because they want to emulate you. Anyway, so yeah, it was a lot of fun. So after high school, where did you go?
Uh, After high school, I tried college, and I tried college until about October,
Yeah.
and by that time I flunked out because I hadn't been to a class yet.
Oh boy.
And I made the mistake of thinking that if I scheduled all my classes in the morning, that I'd have the afternoon to myself. But what I forgot was is that I much rather sleep in the morning,
Yeah.
and so I wasn't going to classes. So I got dropped, and my draft status went from uh, student status to 1A, just
Yeah.
like that.
Right. Quickly.
and so I got drafted. I also got drafted because I got arrested on the uh, Capitol steps in Madison, Wisconsin, for burning my draft card.
Oh boy.
But I got dared to do it by a girl, and she was very attractive. And so I did it, and apparently it turns out that that's government property, or at least that's
Mhm.
what they told me. And I destroyed government property, and I also refused to enter the draft by burning my draft card.
Right.
So they told me that I could do 3 years of hard labor at Leavenworth, Kansas, or I could do 2 years if I volunteered for the draft. And two sounded better than three, so I took the two.
Okay.
And so I started my Army career um, right then and there. But then I glitched out a little bit, and on my way to basic training, I went AWOL accidentally um,
Hold
for
on.
about.
How do you go AWOL accidentally?
Well, that's a long story. I don't know if you got all the time for it.
I'll bet it is. I'll bet it is.
Uh, I went in through the Chicago station,
Yeah.
the Chicago intake station, and they put us on a plane and flew us to Fort Lewis, Washington.
Okay.
So we flew into the Seattle airport, and after it was a long day of processing, so by the time we got there, it was something like 2 o'clock in the morning, some ridiculous time. And of course, it was Seattle, so it was raining pitchforks and hammer handles.
Right.
And they marched us through the airport, which was empty at the time. And they had these school buses, painted green, but school buses,
Mhm.
sitting outside. And all of our little overnight bags were loaded on a cart. And so the guy looked at me and he said, take those bags around in the back of the bus and throw them in, and then get on the bus.
Mhm.
So I rolled the cart around the back and I threw them all in the back in the rain. And I mean, it was raining so hard. If I was a chicken, I'd have drowned.
Yeah.
And so I put them in. I shut the door. I slapped the door. Walked around the side of the bus to get on. The door shut, and the bus drove away. It left me standing on the sidewalk.
Oh my goodness gracious. That's how you go AWOL by accident.
Yeah, that's how. So
Wow.
I could. The airport was empty, closed. There was nothing going on in there. I didn't know who I was supposed to call to say,
Yeah.
"Hey, you want to come back and get me?" So I thought to myself, "Well, I'm on the West Coast, and I'm from Chicago. Grew up in the city and lived on a little farm in southern Wisconsin. So I thought, well, the West Coast, how far away can California be? I guess I'll
Right.
walk."
Right.
So I did for almost 4 months.
Unbelievable.
And I finally got picked up in Fresno, California for vagrancy. And when they ran my fingerprints and my ID and stuff, um, it didn't take very long before I was on my way back to Fort Lewis.
Wow, what a story. So you walked and hitchhiked and all that, or did you just walk?
No, I walked, I hitchhiked, I got rides. I went to a wedding.
Yeah, you did.
I picked fruit in Castroville, California. Um, I slept under underpasses. I was in an earthquake in Long Beach,
Wow.
and I started out with $2 in my pocket. And when I got picked up, I had $2 in my pocket.
Wow. Wow. That is incredible. So 4 months you were basically on the lam, right? So
Well, I wasn't really thinking about being on the lam, but I figured it sooner or later it was going to catch up with me. And the
yeah,
longer I waited, I figured it was going to be worse. And so that was incentive to not turn myself in.
yeah,
And I didn't know where to do it anyway.
yeah.
But I actually wrote a book about it, about the
Awesome.
trip and the walk and things like that. And uh, one stage I got picked up by this hippie band, and they were on their way to a wedding,
Mm.
and they asked me if I wanted to come along. And that turned into about a week and a half of drunken debauchery,
Yeah.
and it was the wedding of Brian Ferry, who was the lead singer for Roxy Music at the time, which was a big recording star
Yeah.
album guy. And Brian Ferry and Susan Blodgett, they got married, and things like that. It was an experience. And that
It
is,
sounds like it. It sounds like it. So you go back to Fort Lewis, then what happens?
well, I got put in the stockade,
Yeah.
and they had to wait until they processed me. They didn't have any place to keep me, so they put me in the stockade and uh, took me out at night so I could low crawl through sawdust pits in my underwear and things like that. So,
Yeah.
but then they got my head screwed on right. They have a unique way of doing that,
Hmm.
and um, so I made honor graduate out of basic training,
Wow. There you
and
go. That's a way to turn it around.
and I thought I would. Well, I don't know what I thought, but I didn't think I'd get infantry, but I did, and so I did my AIT and did all right there too. So by the time I got out of AIT, I was a PFC already.
What's
I'd already
AIT?
advanced individual training.
Okay.
So I did my basics, and I did my AIT, which is just basically more of basic.
Right. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.